everyone. So, Games for Change, how's it going? Good? Woo! Did you know this is my 13th Games for Change, which of course means I've been coming here since I was 10, right? So, I am so thrilled to be here. I love this conference, and it's always a pleasure to come here. And I'm so glad that you're here to meet our four amazing researchers. So, I decided to bring these four amazing researchers here because I think sometimes it's hard to kind of connect each other, right? So often people from industry and educators want really good, timely research, but they don't always know where to go and how to apply it to the work that they're doing. So what I wanted to do today was to connect some of the fantastic research that's happening all over, and hopefully you can use it immediately. Go back and apply it to your own work and your own practice. I chose these four researchers in part because they have inspired some of my own work. This is like my public service announcement. The first two books, by the way, Learning, Education, and Games, are edited by me, but written and reviewed by members of the IGDA Learning, Education, and Games organization that I hope you will join. So please email me and I'll get you on that list. Those two books are free. All you have to do is Google LEG, like this, and ETC Press, and you've got it. It's yours, and you can use it. It's got some really good research and good practices, good case studies for using games in education. And then, of course, the little bonus is my Knowledge Games book, which really is inspired by a lot of the research that's going on in the field and bringing that to citizen science and citizen science gaming. So I hope you check that out. And I hope that you continue to connect with these researchers. So follow us on Twitter, email us, find out what we're working on, and connect with us, because I think there's a lot of good partnerships that could continue to happen between research and industry, nonprofits, and education. So who's speaking today? We've got first up is going to be Jennifer Dalsen. She is a doctoral student in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Wisconsin, Madison. But I just found out that in a few weeks, she's going to be starting out as the user experience researcher at EA Sports, which is fantastic. And her research focuses on the development of scientific language and argumentation through gameplay. She is also now the research lead at Gear Learning. And after her is going to be Dr. Yunjo An. She's an associate professor of instructional technology at the University of West Georgia. She received her master's and PhD degrees in instructional systems technology from Indiana University Bloomington. Her research focuses on digital game-based learning, game design by students, teacher professional development, and virtual and augmented reality in education. And then we have Dr. Jennifer Miller. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at the Illinois Institute of Technology. She is co-founder and co-director of the Developmental Media Lab, which researches and develops media for young children. In collaboration with For All to Play, the lab recently designed, developed, and produced zebra cakes. And then finally, we have Dr. Sanem Siahan. She's an assistant professor of learning sciences and educational technology and the director of the game design program at California State University, San Marcos. So I hope that you will hold your questions till the end. We will have some time at the end for questions, but I want to invite Jennifer Dawson to come up and chat.
Okay, so hi everyone, welcome. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kind of the bare bones of data capture. Now, one thing that I really like about games is that they're wholly different from traditional learning. Now, games can and will transform the way in which we support students in school, but in order to do that, we need to think about ways in which we can take these very powerful and flexible technologies and use them in ways that go beyond fulfilling traditional methodological means. And what I mean by that is a lot of the time we take a game, it's fantastic and powerful, and then we say, well, how can we score that student on a scale from 1 to 100? And what I want to encourage is for us to look beyond that and to think about different ways to merge both qualitative and quantitative data streams together to make more meaningful experiences for the students, for the educators, but also for the designers who are looking to build games in the future. So before I begin, one question I'm asked a lot is, how much data is too much data or too little data? And there's no real golden rule. One data stream is going to have one possible story, one possible interpretation that might be right or wrong. In my prior work supporting students with disabilities, what I found is that that single story, that assessment score, will cause a lot of students who might be able to express themselves in an alternative way to be placed in remedial services. And this is close to my heart because I feel like I know a lot of students who are brilliant, but they can't demonstrate that with a single evaluation. So finding ways in which we can use games to tap into those skills that are otherwise unnoticed is critical. At the same time, collecting too much data, all the data in the world, is not going to be helpful to anyone. So a lot of researchers want to collect a lot of data ahead of time and say, well, maybe we want this, 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 and this. And again, that's great to have if you know why you're looking at that. Same with educators. They might say, well, we want to have all this data collected on our students, in our class, in our cohorts. But why is that the case? And so what I want to encourage, again, is it's not about what students are doing within the class or within a game, but why they are trying to do that action. Why are they choosing to go this route or that route instead of maybe the traditional trajectory that you might have anticipated? And so that's really the starting point. Now, to think about data and data streams, one thing that's helpful to do is to think about ways in which to create a research plan. And so this is a huge challenge. One thing is to think about ways in which to track a player or a student across time. And again, it needs to have meaning to it. Does it make sense to have time from beginning to end as your point of reference? If not, think about a different way to do that. Validated assessments. So in our case for Outplaying the Cosmos, one thing we did was we took an already validated survey that was created by astronomy professors to look at the misconceptions that undergraduate students have about the universe. And we said, okay, well, we're trying to create a game about astronomy education. So what better way than to use an already validated assessment to gauge from beginning to end, before, during, and after gameplay, how students are thinking about the universe. And so by doing that, we had an assessment as part of our larger data corpus. And then something that's achievable. And this is important because we always go with the blue sky document. Whether you're a designer, a teacher, a student, you think, oh, we want to do all these different things. We want the students to learn everything we can by the time they finish that unit. And that's great. But whittling it down to something a little bit more achievable based on the number of students you have, the number, like whatever financial ability you have at that time, graduate students who are under you, like how much time and energy and power you can put forth towards that effort, and knowing that it's going to go through a lot of different revisions to get to where you want to go. Once you have that, and this is true from beginning to middle to end, data organization. Now this sounds very simplistic. In some ways it is, but it's often overlooked, whether it's in a school or in a research plan. So I can't touch on base on all of these right now just because of limited time. But two things that are really critical. One is accessing files and file paths. So anyone who comes into either a school or into a research team can sit down and immediately know this is exactly the files and this is how I can access them so I can get up to speed as quickly as possible. At the same time, thinking about progression and updated information. And these are very different ideas. You have progression over time. So think about a student who starts in September and goes all the way to June. They're going to have a progression with their academics. At the same time, you might be updating their portfolio, or in the case of designer, you might be updating what that design iteration looks like. But you want to have those artifacts from beginning to end so you know what has changed and why that has changed. Again, it's not about what, but why students are doing what they're doing and what the player is choosing to do. Now, for us in Outplaying the Cosmos, we looked at merging both qualitative and quantitative data streams. Now, we based this off of different challenges we saw early on in our design. One was fixed missions. So originally, there was an idea of having a linear path from beginning to end. So mission 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. You have to do one before you get to mission 1 to mission 2, mission 2 to mission 3, and so forth. What we found through a combination of clickstream data, focus group sessions, and observations is that this wasn't quite working for our students. Yes, we need a tutorial level, and that was great because they needed to figure out the basics for games. But beyond that, giving them a little bit more flexibility and have that open world was also just as important. Another one was formulated text. So thinking about ways in which to communicate complex scientific ideas, scientific formulas, in a way that was easy and natural and wasn't something that was being lectured. Originally, we had them as very text heavy, and we switched that to based on focus group, pre-post assessment, clickstream data, and observations. So based on that, we were able to have something that was more interchangeable. So we had a click and drag feature that allowed us to allow the students to be able to understand and interact with that formula on a deeper level. Now, there are a lot of different benefits to merging these different data streams, data organization, and just the research agenda. Personalization is probably the most critical, though, because with all this data, if you can trace that student's progress or the player's progress from beginning to end, you have a more personalized idea of what they're doing and why they're doing that. And so this will help us in the future to think about ways to switch from traditional learning with games and to something that is the more innovative and powerful tool that we want games to become. So, thank you.
The majority of the students, my students at the University of West Georgia, are K-12 teachers, and many of them showed interest in game-based learning. So I developed and taught online graduate level course on visual game-based learning in 2016. Most professional development efforts centered on digital game-based learning focus on educational potential of digital games and using existing games in the classroom. On the other hand, the professional development course I developed included some other aspects of digital game-based learning, including game analysis, game design, and constructionist gaming. More specifically, the course included 5 major activities or assignments. For the first assignment, the students were asked to create informative and persuasive infographics that help other teachers or parents better understand digital game-based learning. For the second assignment, the teachers were asked to develop a plan for integrating existing games into the classroom. The third assignment was game analysis. For the assignment, the teachers were asked to analyze any digital game of their choice. And for the fourth assignment, they were asked to design 3D game-based learning environments and provide feedback to other teachers' game designs. Finally, for the learning through game design assignment, the students were asked to develop a learning activity that engages students in game design. And my research study examined the impact of the professional development experience on teachers' perceptions of the potential of digital games, using digital games in the classroom, teacher involvement in the educational game design, and constructionist gaming. 21 teachers participated in the study. 86% was female, and 57% were Caucasian. The participants didn't have much experience with digital game-based learning. Actually, they had very little or no experience with digital game-based learning. About a little more than half of the participants reported they had used some games in the classroom, but the games they had used were limited to Kahoot, quizzes, or other jury and practice type games. Both qualitative data and quantitative data were collected from pre-survey and post-surveys, and participants' reflections on major assignments. Likert scale items were used to measure their perceptions of the potential of digital games. The results show that their pre-survey, actually post-survey scores were significantly higher than pre-survey scores. And all participants believe that digital games are helpful for students' learning and help students develop real-world skills, including problem-solving skills, decision-making skills, social skills, collaboration skills, communication skills, and teamwork after completing the course. 3 Likert scale items were used to measure their perceived self-efficacy regarding the use of digital games in the classroom. And the results show that their self-efficacy significantly increased after completing the course. Many participants reported that the game design and critique activities improve their understanding of the digital game-based learning. And at the end of the course, all participants believe that teachers should be involved in the education of game design. And although all the participants were unfamiliar with constructionist gaming, once they learned about it, they were very excited about it. And they believe that constructionist gaming can provide meaningful and engaging context that where students can develop and practice real-world skills. The study suggests that exploring existing games is helpful and necessary but insufficient for developing comprehensive understanding of digital game-based learning. And based on the findings of this study, I suggest that future professional development programs should consider providing teachers with opportunities to analyze games, design their own games, and critique other teachers' game designs, and also explore ways to incorporate game design activities in the classroom and informal learning environments. And my prior research suggests that teachers want to use the games that require students to use real-world skills in addition to content knowledge in order to solve problems or complete missions. And you can learn more about the findings of these studies from these articles. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning. So today I'm going to talk about 5 design principles to help with educational games in young children. And by young children, I mean extremely young children. And so preschoolers around 2 to 5, and really my example is going to focus on 2 to 3-year-olds. And so you might be wondering, why are you focused on such a young group? And the motivation is really behind my research in child development and language development. And so right now there's a huge societal issue that many of you may know about, which is called the language gap. And the language gap, briefly, is children from low-income households hear less adult words, and as a function, they also have less words in their vocabulary as young as 18 months of age, and this has significant consequences for their academic success and academic achievement all the way up to 12th grade. And so one of the things that our lab is interested in doing is trying to come up with solutions to help with the language gap and to help children from low-income households learn language. And so just to give you some reference, for those of you that know Chicago, Illinois Institute of Technology is located on the south side. We're in between two neighborhoods, Bronzeville and Bridgeport. And typically, if you look at Bronzeville, historically, many of those families have been termed low-income households. And so they are the ones that we're working with to come up and design games. And so our game that we recently designed is called the Zebra Cakes. It's not the best name maybe, but you won't forget it, right? So Zebra Cakes, and I can tell you, in other conversations, I can tell you why the zebra is purple. It's really driven by the children. Purple was their favorite color, and they really enjoyed zebras. And so today, I'm going to show 5 design principles. I know our artist is like, are you sure you want it to be purple? Yes, we want it to be purple. And so I'm going to give 5 design principles that we use to create this game. And there are obviously more design principles that you could potentially include in this, but we really use this from an intersection of child development, developmental sciences, learning sciences, and game design and media studies to come up with these 5 principles. And so the first one is that, at least for children, the games really need to consider all kinds of domains. And so emotional, cognitive, social, and for this one, I'm going to give you an example of the linguistic needs of the child. And so one of the things that we have to think about for a 2 to 3-year-old, what kind of language can they understand and do they already know and potentially have in their repertoire? And what's really nice is that we have something called the Word Bank, which is based in Stanford, of a normative sample of all kinds of language development for all kinds of populations. And so this is just a really quick example of a network. And I know you can't see the words, but just trust me, the nodes represent a word, and the lines between the nodes represent, here are the words that a child will potentially have by a certain age. And so one of the things that we have found with language development is that children typically learn words that go together. And so, for example, a table and a chair and furniture, these are words that they will know and that they will have in the repertoire because they are similar in terms of category. And so this is one of the principles, is to try and understand what is developmentally appropriate for a child. The second one is to really integrate learning sciences, theoretical frameworks. And there are a number of learning theories. One that I want to go over today is statistical learning. And one of the things, if you're teaching a child a word, you have to think about, how am I going to place the word, the auditory and visual streams together? And children will learn through these co-occurrences in the world. And so you don't necessarily have to say, here's a spoon, this is a spoon. We can do that, but the likelihood of children learning that is actually very low if you think about all the words that they need to learn. And so one of the things that you can do, here's an example of, an illustrative example of, where's the spoon? Oh, under your bib. And after you go through these different co-occurrences over a short time frame, like a minute, they will come to know that the curved object represents a spoon. And so the fancy way of saying that in the research term is they know statistics, which isn't true. They just, the word spoon and the picture spoon co-occur more often than the others. So the third principle that we embedded in our game was to really try and figure out, how can we embed a socially rich context. And so we know that children learn a lot through parent-child interactions, and this is one of the many interventions have been developed around parent-child interactions. And so one of the things that we tried to do with our game was trying to embed places where the adult could actually help the child and provide a scaffolding kind of moment. The fourth principle, and there was also a panel on this yesterday, which I thoroughly enjoyed, about diversity, but to develop diverse content. We've done a lot of research with parents from low-income households about games that they allow their children to play and games that they don't want their children to play. And what we have found is that they are asking for more diverse content. And because of our budget, we had to stick with animals because we didn't have enough money to create other characters. And so this was sort of the baseline of creating diverse content. But all the children selected through the design research process the zebra, and then we also have a unicorn and a lizard as well for future games in this series. And then the fifth principle is to really try and figure out a way that we can transfer opportunities that the child is having in the game to outside real-world opportunities. And so this term is called the transfer effect for those of you in the learning and sciences field. And so how can we ensure that whatever they're learning in the game, that they actually take to the real world? And so with our game, we had the Zero Bake a Cake. And one of the things that we suggested with parents after the game are other opportunities that they have in Chicago if their child likes to bake and likes to cook. And so that's a really quick rundown of the 5 principles. But in addition, I would like to thank my collaborator, Carly Kosurik, who is also co-directing the Developmental Media Lab, as well as our funding at Illinois Tech. Thank you.
There we go.
Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here and talking about a topic that I feel like is not getting enough attention from game designers, educators, and researchers. Today I will discuss what we currently know about what families do with video games and share some of the findings from my own research project that range from designing virtual games for families to ethnographic studies of families playing games in the comfort of their home, and to designing experiences around commercial games for families as part of family gaming events and after-school programs. Let me start with a question. How many of you think Halo is a family-friendly game? Not many, right? The ESRB rating of the game is mature, M for mature, meaning that it's appropriate for people ages 7 and up. And if you do a quick search on Common Sense Media, you will see that Common Sense Media rates the educational value of the game as 1, and the violence as 4. So the shooting and the killing involved in the game would definitely raise some concerns and some eyebrows, right? Now, here are some images that you see around family gaming in mainstream media. So families, each person with their own controllers, having fun, and probably playing games like Family Fun Pack, Just Dance, Super Mario Brothers, that are marketed as family-friendly games. Now, on one hand, these are good because they cast video games in a positive light, right? Like as something all family members could enjoy. But on the other hand, as my own work suggests, family gaming practices are far more diverse than how they're being portrayed in mainstream media. So let me share with you several examples of what's going on with families around video games. So here we have Hector and his sons who played Subway Surfers 2 to 4 nights a week on Hector's phone for an hour while his wife prepared dinner for the family. Hector did not find the game particularly educational, but enjoyed watching his children develop their skills in dodging the trains and collecting coins, something that was challenging for him, but seemed like second nature to them. And while gaming was a family routine in the case of Hector and his sons, Emma and her parents created a culture of family gaming. Of the many games Emma and the family played, alone and together, Halo stood out most with respect to its affordances for family connection, communication, and learning. What you don't see in this image, to the right, is that Emma and her parents are playing the game with Emma's aunt, uncle, and her cousin Nick. When Emma and Nick were babies, they sat in their bouncy chairs in the living room while their parents played the game. And around the time that Emma and Nick were 3 years old, they started to participate in actual gameplay. First, they sat on their parents' laps with their hands on top of their parents' hands, using the controllers, and mostly watching their parents play. And over time, the children developed enough understanding of the game to play alongside their parents. And Gabe and his son Luca engage in a shared literacy experience as they play Civilization together on a shared computer at a family gaming event. At first, Gabe did more of the reading than Luca because Luca didn't like reading. After reading the game text, Gabe explained what the text meant for their next action in the game. He also engaged Luca in the process of making sense of the information by asking him for suggestions about their next strategy after reading. As they continued to play, Gabe gradually gave the responsibility of reading to Luca. Now, these are, I just shared with you a few examples of what families do with games, and families could do even more with the help of, with some support from game designers and educators. Parents, especially mothers, are looking for some kind of a personal connection to the content of video games. Trivia or exer games are fun, but they do little to sustain the interest of families over time and engage parents who do not usually play video games with their children. Game designers need to start thinking more broadly about the content of family-friendly games. Further, there are many games for young children and adults, but not many people in between. So we need to start thinking about the developmental differences and the needs of different age groups. When designing games for families, game designers need to create opportunities for parents and children to exchange expertise. For instance, in many cases, children are better at using the controllers, but parents are better strategizers, so they strategize better than children. Family learning is enhanced when parents and children take responsibility over the different aspects of gameplay. Finally, we need to start designing not just for the interaction between the players and the game, but among players. And when we design games for families, the interactions between players need to promote conversations that go beyond the logistics of gameplay. So needs to go beyond managing the gameplay and actually transform the relationship between family members and their understanding of themselves, each other, and the world. Of course, it's not enough to design better games for families. Educators also need to be involved in helping families unlock the potential of video games for family connection and learning. One way to do this is to create family gaming events where families can come to a school or an after-school site to explore different games. These events need to be structured to get the most out of the family gaming experiences because, guess what? Not all families interact productively around games. So, creating design challenges that parents and children can complete together around more open-ended games like Minecraft, Sims, Civilization could provide a context for family collaboration and learning. And finally, helping families reflect on their gaming experiences and connect these experiences to their real-world experiences could facilitate deep learning around video games. So with more research, better design games, and support from educators, we can really transform video games from being a force that creates a wedge between generations to a context for family togetherness and learning. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So we have some more time to ask some questions of our 4 researchers. So please, if anyone has a question, don't hesitate. In the back. Thank you.
One of which was an ethnographic work. Basically, I work with 17 families over 6-month period where I observed them in their home and I visited them several times and interviewed them, documented them, asked them to do diaries. But I also designed games for families and kind of explored the impact of my designs on families and what had happened, and explored different kind of design principles that might sort of promote conversation between parents and kids. I also did family gaming events and after-school programs around commercial games, because one of the things, obviously parents, not all parents, know how to, where to start with their kids, right? And I didn't know, in some ways, how to interact with them. So what I found important is actually designing experiences around existing games, because we kind of tend to think that the game itself is the experience, right? Like there's nothing to design around them. But for families, it's actually very important. The understanding of Minecraft, or the way parents and kids would have a conversation on Minecraft, would be very different if you actually frame an experience around Minecraft to get the conversation going. So in those kinds of design-based research projects, I did video recordings. So I recorded the screen that parents use, their voices. I also video recorded them, so I would have their facial as well, and some pre-post tests and some follow-up questionnaire as well. So it's everything really over a decade. So. Yes. For that one ethnographic study that I did, yeah.
Yes, right in the middle.
Right now is sort of, and that's something that we ask parents or families a lot. So when do you give your child your tablet or the smartphone? And it's usually around, I'm trying to do something, I just want my child to stay there and not move, right? And I think if you're a parent, you can really appreciate that, right? A 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, they have a lot of energy. We just need them to sit. And so that's a tricky balance. And one of the things that we're still trying to play around with are, if we do have opportunities where the parent needs to engage in a game, what happens when the parent's not around? Because we still want the child to play with the game. And so how do we create those opportunities? And what we're going to end up having to do is have a parent mode and a child mode, because there's really no way for the child to play alone if we're trying to create those kinds of experiences. And so there are definitely times when the child needs to be sort of occupied with something, but then we're hoping that we can start the conversation where it can be seen as a tool for parent-child interaction. But that's definitely something that we've been struggling with, and we're open to suggestions and trying to figure out the right way to design the game so that you can have both sides of the coin. But that's a great question.
Other questions? I have a question. So if there was like one thing from your research, from the work that you've done, if there's one thing that you could tell someone who's doing game design or creating some kind of games, either experiences around the game or games, if there's just one thing you wish they knew and that maybe they don't know so well, what would you tell them? And this is for anyone. Any one of you can
One.
I can speak to this. For me, especially in the context of families, we really need to think about what personal relevance means. How games are personally relevant to someone, especially I work with parents with diverse backgrounds, those who grew up on games, those who didn't touch games growing up. Personal relevance is the hook to get anyone into a game. And I think we need to think a little bit, we need to invest in what personal relevance means to kind of hook the player into the game. I think we take it for granted that games are fun and like, you know, all these people are playing, so why the heck we're thinking about personal relevance? But there are also so many people who are not playing games. And I think personal relevance as a design principle, or how do you kind of like, you know, tie that into what you're doing?
Collaboration with different partners. So for my work, I've worked with subject matter experts. Like I look at the user experience, but I'm not a game developer. So entrusting the game developers to know what they're doing for designing that game, knowing the subject matter experts, they know that content, whether it's psychology or astronomy, and be able to come together and have that strong communication, be able to come away with a final product that is meaningful, but also interactive and immerse the student or the player into learning something new and exciting. So I think collaboration is, I think, a very strong and critical takeaway in order to create a successful game, whether it's specifically designed for education or commercial.
Teachers are end users of educational games. So I think it's really important to understand their perspectives when developing educational games.
I think all the answers so far have been great, but I think I keep coming back to this diversity part, and I think it's really important that when you're designing for different, to think about who are you designing for and what's the really end user. And I know everyone does, but the diversity part keeps coming up again in a lot of the research that I'm doing with families and with parents of young children as to why they're selecting certain games over others. And so I think that's a part, and there was a panel here yesterday that nicely outlined a lot of the different features of how to become diverse or to start thinking about diversity. And so I think that's a really important key point to keep in the back of everyone's mind.
Yes, in the front.
Hello. This is a question for you, Sinem. Sinem. Okay. I really like this. I work at Quest to Learn, which is a games-based learning school, and I really like this idea of having like parent student games nights. I just really love that idea. I'm wondering, like, how would you suggest, or what did you see, like what kind of messaging did you use to help parents see how this would be a helpful thing as opposed to just another drain on their tight parent time? Yeah.
Obviously, I got it wrong the first time, but as I did this several times, I kind of had a good handle of what happens. I always frame the experience around problems, so I create these design challenges that are very real problems. So in Minecraft, you know, I always start with a narrative. You know, the one challenge is, okay, you decided to move to a farm, you know, and the place that you move has a water problem, but you have to grow crops, you know, because you have to eat as a family. So, so figure out a good layout that will kind of optimize the water use. This is just one example, but with these like sort of little narratives that kind of position the parent and the child as a collaborative partner. So they're a team in this experience, right? Although the experience is a single user experience. And then from there, they then start working on that challenge or that problem. I did this with Sims too. I mean, Sims is so great. You know, you can actually create lots of design challenges within Sims that are really kind of connects to real world problems. That's one way I did it. And one of the things I want to mention is because people always ask me, did you do Minecraft with multiple users? Because, you know, that's the hype. No, actually, when I did Minecraft with multi-users with families, they did not talk to each other. They all focused on the screen. Hey, I'm here. Can you come? This was the kind of conversation which is great, but it's not enough to help families to see the value of games. They might have like a 45-minute fun, but it's not enough for a parent to walk away from that experience saying, you know what, I discovered something about this game that I never thought I would. So I would say that connection to real world experiences and making sure that they are really positioned from the get-go as a team, and also structure the experience so that they are their team, but they're taking different roles, like who's the driver, who's the backseat right there. So what I do is I say, okay, 30 minutes, the kids are controlling the keyboard, and then 30 minutes later, I switch them so that, they're kind of experimenting with different roles, and they're kind of learning about different ways to interact. What happens when the child is, backseat when playing Minecraft? I mean, that's hard for a kid. Like it's seriously hard for a kid to not get so excited about Minecraft and let the parent, drive.
So that would have been a follow-up question to the one that I actually wanted you to answer, which is, how do you get, I'm asking, how do you get parents to the building? Like, I'm thinking, like, here in New York City, parents are busy.
Okay, I tell you this. That's a great question. I live in San Diego, and I used to live in Phoenix, Arizona, so I don't know the different, geographical, area. But here's the thing. When I promote the event, it's about time together. It's a quality time together, all right? That's what parents care about. If they can, so here's the one thing. When I first started doing this, they said, that is crazy. Families play games at home. Why would they come to an after-school program or a school site to play games? Like, that's insane. Games is, in their space. Actually, they would love to get out of home because house, chores, siblings, this and that, they don't actually spend quality time, period, but not quality time around games. So they're not interacting the way that they're interacting when they can come out. So I just said it's quality time together. It's an hour. Come, have fun, learn something about games, and spend quality time with your kid. And learn from your kid.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. I do, yes, thank you. Just real quick, Families at Play coming out, yes, from MIT Press.
Nice.
Of this year.
I
know. Hashtag Families at Play.
Yeah.
So I'm just listening, and
I mean, it's funny for me because actually it's the opposite in my family. I'm always like begging my husband to play video games, or I'm like, I'm the one playing video games, and I actually have to push my kids to play them. I know it's a little strange. I'm like, please play this game with me, and they're like, what? They're 4 and 2, so they're still figuring it out, but they'll get there. But that's a great question. I mean, have you found that there are gender differences in who wants to support play with their children, or is it pretty much like maybe that's a myth? Maybe moms like me are just like, please play video games with me, and everyone just has this idea that we don't really want to play games, but we do, right?
Well, first of all, family gaming events are a great way to attract people like you, but yes. But also, yes, there are gender differences. At least it came in my research because those gaming events actually attracted more moms than dads. But I want to be clear, the reason moms are not playing is not because they were not playing games when they were growing up. There are messages that mothers are getting about what it means to be a good mom. Okay, and in this book, I have a quote in my book that this parent is so stuck. Like she goes, I play games when I was growing up. With my first child, I played games with them, and it was fun. But then I read these books on parenting, and then they told me that it's not good to let your kids play video games. Okay, so mothers especially are much more vulnerable I think around these messages, because it's all about, they're the caregiver, they're the provider, and they're really trying to do their best, right? So when someone says, or this expert tells them, like, you know what, one way to be a good parent is unplug and don't let your kids play games, they're going to do that, right? Like, that's the, commonsensical to do. So the playing field is not the same, fathers and mothers. That's why I want to say, when fathers play games with their kids, it's great, they're fun, they're involved, right? But when mom lets their kids play, it's, they're being criticized by other moms and these experts out there that I shall not name.
We have time for one more question.
Sorry, I don't want to
I
sound.
was just going to add the academic piece comes in from the at math grade, then the games sort of lay off. I think the framing is how maybe that can integrate your child's learning to improve. That might help parents understand more the value, because when those academics start kicking in at elementary and middle, games usually is the first thing parents will take away, as opposed to maybe support so they can learn differently or better. That's a good point, though.
About games that you don't like? Is it that you don't know how to use the games, or is it that I just don't want to sit down,
No,
and so,
mostly because I like the, my phone simple games.
Yeah.
But mostly it's like I don't. It's controllers. Like I talk about not growing up. Like I didn't grow up. And we played arcade games, but like
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with this. And now I just feel silly. It's like my kids are like left, X, left, and I'm like, I just do it.
Yeah.
So that's why. But I really
Yeah.
do like the idea, especially that I've learned more over the last years here that gaming, especially for kids that maybe have educational components, is really good for them in a lot of ways.
and there's a whole host of, tangible tech that might be a little bit more engaging, or something that you might be more interested in. And so I think the tech center at Ericsson is really good at trying to figure out, like, what is it about games that you don't like, and trying to figure out another sort of vehicle for.
Not that anyone cares about my story, but before
No,
we
we do.
I played one story game, but now I can't remember. Setting and chairs next to each other. He always had the controller, and I would just talk about where we were. Like, I was like, I think the key is behind that room. Like, go that way, go that way. And I was like, I see a zombie, but I never actually.
Yeah.
Touch it. So maybe when they get all the way to fully voice controlled, I'll be ready.
But I want to make a point that what you just described is okay. That is
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I mean, in my book, I discussed this. We need to stop thinking that multiplayer, co-op games are like the games that, if you're not playing those games, you're not a gamer, and that's not. Families, for example, use mobile phones, single-user games, and they take turns to play. That's play, okay? Like that's play, right? So the fact that you don't like controls, that's fun, and you don't have to, But there are lots of opportunities to play besides the, the gaming console. Besides, like each one of us having their own controller. So.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much to our researchers for sharing their research and their insights. I hope that you will continue to look at their work and also download their papers. And check us out, follow us on Twitter, and have a great, wonderful day.